Over on the Risks tab, you can take a look at the various risks that the Managed Methods platform has picked up. And risks, again, are anything that you want the platform to look for, with whether it be within Drive, Gmail, Share Drive, Google Classroom announcements, or Google Chat. So anything from social security numbers to credit card numbers, indications of self-harm, violent or adult images. A lot of different options there that the platform can look for. Certainly can expand beyond that as well too. Those are just a few examples there. So to begin with, when you look at the risks tab, first off, you're going to see the total number of active risks here. So just a number value giving you, hey, here are all the risk scans all the risks the platform has picked up here. Below that will be some distribution of where those risks are located. So here we can see quite a few found within Drive and Share Drive files, quite a few here found within email message bodies and attachments. And then again, we also do look at Google Classroom announcements and Google Chat as well too. And there'd be numbers here too if there were any risks within those environments as well. Further down here, you're going to see some distribution. Are the risks coming in from the outside with incoming? Are they leaving the environment under the outgoing section here? Next, that is going to be the accounts with the most risk. These are going to be the accounts that have the most risks associated with them. Certainly something to keep a close eye on. On the staff side, this is where you might run into a case where you have a staff member who has a lot of access into sensitive information that you had no idea that they had that access in the first place. That's certainly something that we've seen in the past. Definitely good idea to keep a close eye on that, because certainly there could be a staff member who, for whatever reason, has a lot of social security numbers within that user's specific drive, or it might be a case where there's a lot of email traffic going back and forth about different things that contain sensitive information. Certainly there have been instances where people sometimes are not fully cognizant of how they need to treat certain information, and how there can be risks with different ways of sharing that information, or even just sending it via email there as well too. Over on the student side, this is where we can see indications sometimes of self-harm. If there's a long conversation back and forth between a couple of different students, this might indicate that there's a student who's talking about some kind of issues around self-harm or something else where it needs to be addressed there directly, or it could be a case of an inappropriate image being passed around or something of that nature. So definitely a good idea to keep an eye on both areas. Certainly both can have different issues there. And then that takes us to the enabled risks themselves. So these are the risk scans that are turned on and active in the environment. They're going to be 5 out of the box ones. First off, one here is going to be PCI, looking for potential credit card numbers. Below that will be PII, looking for potential social security numbers. Self-harm ML, so that's indicating this is our self-harm machine learning model. So this one's designed to evaluate the sentiment and context of a potential risk there, specifically around self-harm. So it does a good job of looking for that potential self-harm. Below that, self-harm strict, which is a phrase-based model, also does a good job of looking for things, but more focused on very explicit phrases around potential indications of self-harm. Further down here is going to be image risk ML, so that's going to be looking for potential violent or adult images there. Further down, you might see a few additional ones. These are optional ones just to give you some illustration of some of the other risk scans that can be turned on for the platform, whether that be looking for IEP information, those individualized education plans, FERPA information, a toxicity risk scan, which is designed to machine learning risk scan, which is designed to look more at behavior around things as well too, and also a substance abuse one designed to look for potential alcohol, drug use, things of that kind of nature there. And certainly you can expand beyond those risk scans as well too. This small gear wheel icon here, if I go ahead and click on it, will give a long list of additional risk scans. Not all of these would be ones that the environment would roll out with, but certainly additional possibilities as well too. And this is something where we can certainly assist you with too, if there are risk scans you want to have set up. So when taking a look at any risk scan, if you go ahead and click on the number here, this is going to go ahead and then filter by that, or search by that specific risk type. So in this case here, I'm searching and I just want to take a look at all of the PII risk scans. Now, one thing to keep in mind with risk scans as a whole here is they're designed to be non-directional. So they're just focused in on, does this information exist within the environment itself? Through policies or through quick filters here, that's where we can establish some directionality on things. I want to focus in on stuff that's being shared to the outside or sent to the outside, etc. there. So if I come over to the quick filters button here and go ahead and apply a filter, I'm going to go ahead and apply the files to outside domain filter here. So now I'm looking at outbound things. And I can go ahead and click into any of these to take a look and see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and use this transcript form as an example. So when I first click into a risk here, you're going to see some high-level information. So the risk details, this is where I can dive into the risk to take a look at further detail on what the platform picked up on here. I can see over here on the link shares, were there any link shares associated with this risk? In this case, they're not. Further down, who created this document and when? So you can see the creation date and time here and the actual creator. Are there any user shares? In this case, there are user shares, and the reason that this particular risk picked up as being shared to the outside in some way is there's a one external domain here under this user shares. And if I go ahead and click on the view all there, I'd be able to see that information directly. Take a look at who they shared it to, in this case, Microsoft domain here. So definitely not part of this particular domain. Further down here, the domain of where the file originated from. In this case, that's the domain here. Makes perfect sense. Holders here, who's actually holding it and where. So it's located in this user's My Drive. When did this document last get modified here? What's the file type if applicable? Who's the actual owner of the file? Again, that same user that we've been seeing multiple times here. And then what's the source? So where is this located? In this case, it's located within Drive here. And if I did come up to the view more here, be able to click into this and take a look and see what got flagged directly. So any of the phrase-based models or ones that are looking for specific number strings here are going to give you some context around what actually got picked up. So in this case here, we can see a transcript request. We've got a social security number here, date of birth, a lot of sensitive information on this document for sure, something that would definitely be very concerning if it popped up here. And if you ever need to further look at a document, email attachment, you always have the ability to download it here. So emails, chats, things found within Drive files, those can be downloaded right from here when you click into it. Email attachments are treated a little bit differently. There'll be a different section to download those here. But in the case of this Drive file here, I clicked on that download button. It would then download a local copy for me to take a look at and further dive into. From there, you can then take actions on any one individual risk. So the first action here is ignore. This is your way of marking something as resolved within the platform, clearing it out of the risks tab here. So this will go ahead and just remove it from the risk tab. It's not going to impact the user in any way, but it will just say, nope, this has been taken care of. We don't need to look at this on the risks tab anymore here, any further there. Below that is going to be a quarantine action, and this is going to be a little bit dependent on the type of content. So this will apply to either Drive files or emails. For a Drive file, this will actually initiate a file ownership transfer over to the admin of the ManagedMethods platform. It's going to go ahead and break all the share permissions on that document and then transfer ownership over to that admin account there in a folder called cam_quarantine until someone decides to do something with it. Those quarantines for Drive files can be reverted via the restore button here. It would then give that file back to the original owner, restore all the share permissions with that file there. For email, quarantine is going to be a little bit different. It's going to go ahead and move that email from the user's inbox to their trash. Same idea here with the restore, you can move it back from the trash back to their inbox there. One thing to keep in mind is that because the ManagedMethods platform is an API-based platform, we don't have direct access to outbound mail traffic, so we can't stop outbound mail traffic is what I mean by that. So we can certainly tell you who sent it, when it got sent, all that information, but we just don't have any ability to prevent outbound mail traffic. So in the case of quarantine here, a little bit less relevant with that outbound traffic. Now, if someone's sending stuff into your users, absolutely the quarantine can do a great job of moving those emails to the user's trash as soon as they're picked up on there. Delete there, we'll go ahead and delete this piece of content out of the domain entirely. Very powerful feature. Not something you probably want to use all that often, but if there's something that just does not need to be in the environment anymore, and it's been checked it through, it's good to go, doesn't need to be held for any reason, certainly that delete can be a great option if necessary there. One final option here under the actions is share via email. This allows you to share the high-level information to somebody else on this risk scan. You can enter into the recipients here, a subject line, comments for the message body itself there, and then you have the option to mask the risk or not. Generally speaking, in most circumstances, it might make sense to mask the risk, especially on things like PII and PCI. But when it comes to something like self-harm, it might make sense to leave the risk unmasked there, so when they receive that risk, it makes perfect sense of what's going on with that particular incident there. And then very easy to navigate back and forth between risk scans as well too. The next and previous button here will allow you to quickly navigate through those various risk scans, take a look at what's going on there directly, so you can create a workflow that way to quickly dive through the various risk scans here. Now those same actions are also available here along this actions ribbon, and many of these actions can also be taken in bulk here on up to 500 different risks at a time. So if I go ahead and click the checkmark box here, you can see that will highlight, so I have the ability to bulk ignore risks, quarantine, restore, delete, share via email, but there are two additional actions here which are not on that actions button itself, and that's going to be the remind later and the label. So the remind later allows you to generate a reminder on a specific date and time, and that can be for yourself or somebody else. It just has to be a valid email address there. And once you click that add reminder button, it'll add a little clock icon there, and then we'll send out a reminder email on that date and time to come back and look at that risk specifically. The label button here is going to allow you to apply tags directly after the name of the risk here. There are 3 out-of-the-box labels of normal, major, and critical, but you can also generate your own labels as well too. So for example here, and I can also double label things, this might be a case of where this is going to be in review and this is going to be my responsibility to come back and look at here. Also very easy to go ahead and remove those labels if you don't need them anymore. But the labels are very handy if you do have a situation where there'll be multiple people looking at information in the environment and you want to quickly apply some labels so you know so-and-so is going to be responsible for this particular risk type or this risk action. So-and-so is going to be responsible for this. And then very easy if I come back to the labels here to generate a new label, just give it a name, pick a color, and then you can even add parameters on top of this as well too. So you'll see a lot of these parameters will be ones that correspond to either the information within the table itself here as well too. And this can be very handy if you do have a situation where you need to have a label set for a specific type of risk. And those various labels can also be applied retroactively to existing risk scans as well too. So that's going to be one of the more data loss prevention focused risks there with our PII risk scan. Very similar process to go through and look at things on the PCI side of things as well too. But I'm going to go ahead and jump down to self-harm ML next here. And this is one of our machine learning based risks. So this is one where directionality probably not as concerning. If someone is talking about any indications of self-harm, probably worth taking a look at here. With any of these various emails here, in this case it's a lot of emails, we can go ahead and click into one of them. You'll see here that this risk scan also got double flagged. So it is possible for something within the environment to get flagged by more than one risk scan. So if there is a document where it contains a lot of indications of self-harm, it might get double flagged by our self-harm strict and ML models. Or if there's something that contains social security numbers but also has credit card numbers in it, that's also a possibility as well too. So there's a lot of different things that can potentially get double flagged, and if that's the case, that's something you certainly want to investigate, like in the case of this one here. Same idea here. This is an example of an email here, so you're going to see that's a little bit different. We'll see a subject line here, sender details here, some recipients both inside the domain as well as outside the domain, and same idea. If you go ahead and click onto it, you'll see directly who that email got sent to. In this case, this particular domain not part of the actual domain here. The domain here again, where was this located? In this case, in the message body. No email attachments, but this is where if there were email attachments, you'd be able to download those attachments to take a look at them directly. And if something gets flagged as being a risk within an email attachment, that particular email attachment would have a red triangle icon next to it to indicate that there was risk within that email attachment, and then you'd be able to download that email attachment directly to take a closer look at it there. Coming over to the self-harm ML risk and clicking on it, you're going to notice that there's a risk level and then a risk score on it. So the risk level and the risk score are definitely good to take a look at, but really anything that does get flagged as self-harm ML is worth reviewing and taking a look at, especially if it's a student account that's been flagged for having self-harm ML. From there, you'd want to download the message body. That's the recommended action on anything that gets flagged as self-harm ML. So if you go ahead and click on that download button here, that'll go ahead and download a local copy for you to take a look at. If I go ahead and click on that, that text may be a little bit small there, but pretty easy to see why this one here got flagged as potential self-harm ML. From there, this is then where the false positive button will come into play. This is something you may have seen previously over on the PII side, but this just applies to any of the machine learning risks, always denoted with this ML at the end of the name of the risk. So this false positive button, if this was something that was not legitimate here, I could go ahead and click on that. There's an option to put in comments about why this was a false positive, and then you can go ahead and click apply there. That information is going to be made anonymous, it's going to be made randomized, and then it's also going to be used to retrain the models over time. And that's something we're always in the process of doing to get better and better here. The self-harm ML model does a good job, but it's not foolproof, so we always want to make sure that that model can get better and better there. Otherwise, same idea. Once the incident's been resolved, you could come in and ignore it. This is where probably the quarantine, restore, delete may not make as much sense here in this case, but certainly could apply depending on the situation there. So that's an example of two of the different types of risk scans that we have available there, more of the data loss prevention side of things and then more of that student safety behavioral side of things here.